Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the Planning Committee being held at 6 p.m. on the 9th of February 2023. Just as a reminder, obviously this meeting is being live streamed, so that will be readily available as and when the meeting starts. With that, we'll go on to apologies for absence. Do I have any apologies for absence, Kenna? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Piccolo and Tandy and also from Steve Taylor.
Okay, thank you. I don't believe we have any subs there, so all members currently here will be involved. Going on to the minutes of the meeting, are there any comments from the minutes from the 1st of December 2022 and 5th January 2023? Found on pages 5 to 18. No? Any comments on the accuracy? No? We're happy with those? Yeah.
Second.
Brilliant. Excellent. Cheers, thank you. Okay, items of urgent business. I've not agreed to any items of urgent business. Right, then moving on to declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Oh, Councillor. No. No, okay. All right then. We then move on to declarations of receipt of any correspondence. I've not received anything this month in relation to Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, I've had correspondence from Mr. Mark Watts.
Same here.
I think you can safely say we probably all have.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. I must have missed that. Well, I've probably got it. I've not seen it. All right then. Let's go on to number 6, planning appeals, pages 19 to 28. Any comments to Lee in relation to any of our appeals? Any questions there? Lee, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. No reports for noting, but yeah, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, doesn't look like there's any questions there. All right then, so then on to item 7, which is a public address to the Planning Committee. That obviously allows us to discuss the 3 items that we have on the agenda here this evening. Item 9, actually I probably should have put this under interests. I won't be involved in the London Gateway Logistics Park local development order as I'm employed by London Gateway, and Vice Chair Georgette will kindly field that item as I'll leave the chamber when we start that, and I'll return for Pool House. Okay. Obviously that should have gone under interest there. All right then, so with that we'll go under item 8, which we'll start with this evening. This is the Hollies Rectory Road, found on pages 29 to 46. This is obviously a deferred item. Councillor Shinnick, you are able to vote on this item this evening as you were present at the site visit and the first time that this was discussed via the presentation, etc. Okay. John, would you be so kind as to present the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll briefly run through the slides again very quickly. So that's the application site on the screen at the moment in the red line. That's an aerial photo showing the existing property in the middle of the screen. That's a composite, or 2 composite plans showing the boundaries of the conservation area with the semicircle, purple semicircles and the green belt in green. That's the existing building and swimming pool on site at present. Those are the existing plans of the existing property and the proposed site plan, which has the new property located further to the east within the site within the green belt. Those are the proposed floor plans of the building, the proposed elevations, and some photos of the site entrance from the high road, looking west towards the entrance, looking east across the front of the site, looking west from the boundary, and looking northwest, and views from the public right-of-way to the south. So as the Chair said, the application was considered at the last meeting. The recommendation at the last meeting was for refusal on the basis of the harm to the green belt in terms of principle and openness, and also impact on the conservation area. At that meeting, members discussed what their concerns and sort of reasons to support the proposal were, and we took that away and officers looked at those reasons. So there were 8 reasons as set out within the update report. Officers have carefully looked at all those reasons but haven't found anything in those reasons that would outweigh the harm to the green belt or the harm to the conservation area. So the recommendation at this point remains recommendation for refusal in terms of the character and openness and principle of the greenbelt development and the harm to the conservation area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you for that detailed report, and obviously thank you for taking away that last month and then bringing it back for this month. Obviously a lot of work's gone in there to research our reasons for potential approval. Okay, that then opens it up to questions. Do any of the members here this evening have any further questions to ask John? No? No, nothing further. I don't have anything further to add, other than to say, look, you know, thank you for taking time out to get this back to us. Obviously, we don't have any speaker statements. This is uniquely I think it's the fourth time this application's come to committee, so it will be good to come to some form of conclusion this evening. I assume that nothing much has changed if no one has any further questions. So we'll head to the potential vote and we'll see where we end up. So first of all, and I'll just double check with Lee. Okay, thank you. So just to confirm, obviously, there'll be 5 voting members here this evening. Unfortunately, Councillor Polly won't be able to vote, so it will just be us 5. So what I'll do, we'll go to the recommendation, which is of refusal. All those in favour of refusal? Okay, thank you. Okay, and all those against? Okay, so obviously that's been defeated as it was at the last meeting. I'd like to recommend approval. Is that seconded? Okay, thank you. Lee, I'll just bring you in there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So just referring to the Council's Constitution, Constitution Chapter 5, Part 3 sets out the protocol for such circumstances. So the report that's in the agenda pack sets out the reasons and the implications of a decision against recommendation. Paragraph 7.4 of the Constitution sets out that if the committee is still of the same view, it will need to then again consider its reasons for granting permission, and a summary of those reasons for the decision will be given, which must be formally recorded in the minutes of the meeting, and goes on to say that it's important that justification for departing from officer's recommendation is recorded in the minutes are those given at the committee, and justification is not subject to later elaboration. Courts have expressed a view that reasons should be clear and convincing, and just as a general reminder, there's 2 reasons for refusal. First reason relates to greenbelt harm, the second relates to harm to conservation area, so both of those reasons would need to be addressed. And because this is a greenbelt application, we need to ensure that the scales are tipped clearly, so the reasons put forward to approve have to clearly outweigh the harm that's been identified in the report.
Cheers, thank you, Lee. So, first of all, John, as I mentioned, thank you for taking that away and coming back to us. Obviously, looking at your reasonings there, we go from reason A all the way down to reason H. I'll start with A and we'll go through. So, first and foremost, obviously, we've got the 2 reasons for refusal there, which is impact on greenbelt and the conservation area. So, first and foremost, the movement of the existing dwelling and the previous developed lands. Obviously, our reasons there of that dwelling moving back onto the previous development land, I do think that we can add moderate weight to that, as it is an improvement on what is already there. And obviously looking at the, and that's obviously linked with B as well, which is the repositioning of the proposal would result in an improvement of the street scene and the neighbourhood property. Looking at reason C, all right, I accept that. Obviously, I think I do think that's important that you know, no objections were received, and it was supported by the councillors. And we even had a comment from the gentleman that looks after the conservation area saying that he had no issues with that. But I don't think, respectfully, in legal terms, that we can add much weight to that. So I accept C probably has has no weight whatsoever. Looking at reason D, the site is enclosed. Again, I think that's very important. I don't think it's going to have the impact that it says it will, but I do accept that, you know, what John's come back with there. You know, there's very little we can use there, albeit the whole purpose of the green belt is you know, protect the openness, and the site is enclosed. So I will use moderate for that, because I do think that I do think it will have a less impact. Looking at reason E, let's go there. Reason E. The large size of the infrastructure project would obviously benefit the local economy. I think it will. I think it will help tradesmen, but I accept, John, that, you know, in legal terms, there's not much weight there, so I won't add anything to that. Whilst I would accept that, you know, it will benefit local tradesmen and women. Looking at F, I do think that we can add moderate weight to it being a low carbon development. It's very important in this day and age. And then looking at reasons G and H, we'll start with G. Again, you know, it's not the first time we would have approved a development in Greenbelt. I know we voted for Highfields recently, but I accept that looking at these numbers here, that's not something that we could add any moderate weight to. And then looking at H, let's go to H. The impact on the Alsip Conservation Area would be limited. Again, we've had those comments from the Alsip Conservation Area, or the gentleman that runs that. He's got no concerns, but obviously our heritage advisor has raised concerns, so I won't be adding any weight to that, albeit I do accept that I do think that that's a decent reason. So looking at that, Lee, I've got the movement of the existing dwelling on previous development land as moderate. Impact, the repositioning, I've got down there as moderate. And you have ultimately, it is something that I think we do want to send off, but it does have that safety net of being called up by the planning inspector if there are any further concerns. I don't disagree with the officer's report. I think it's very well put together. I think councillors do have a little bit of a flexibility. You know, we can look at these things a little bit more flexible, and on that basis, we would like to potentially send it off. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going back to the to B, which was sorry, I'm just trying to find the section on the report. It was the repositioning the proposal. Not wishing to put words into members' mouths, but the discussion previously centred quite heavily around this point here, so it was just questioning whether the committee felt that moderate weight was correct, or whether the committee was minded to give more weight to that, because that felt as though that encapsulated more of the debate. And just on a process point, the application wouldn't need to be referred because of the size of the proposal.
Okay, Councillor Shinnick, Councillor Watson, you happy to move B from moderate to significant? I won't do that without your agreement, but if you guys are happy, we'll move with that. All right then, Lee, yeah, you're happy. Okay, I'll move to Caroline, yeah. Caroline, I understand you've got your hand raised. Please come in with any further comments. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm just reminding members that substantial weight is given to any harm to the green belt, and that very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the green belt by reason of its inappropriateness and any harm arising from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. So, you know, the substantial weight is in terms of weighting is, you know, the where we're at, you know, in terms of because the development is an appropriate development.
Okay then, no, all right, I accept that. So obviously there's the two reasons there for refusal. So we'll move those with agreement from Councillor Watson to Chinnock to substantial. If you're happy with that, okay. Lee's just going to update that now. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Chair. And just going back to A, the local trades, was that listed as moderate, or was that, sorry, just my own understanding? I think moderate.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, then thank you, everyone. So what we'll do, we'll move to one final vote there, and we'll seal this item off. So application reference 22/01241/FUL. The Hollies in, all sit, all those in favour, and obviously this would be subject to conditions to be agreed to by myself. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. All those against? Okay, thank you, Kenneth. Cheers. Okay, so that application has been approved, which can now take us on to the next item, which is the LDO, which Georgette Polly, as Vice Chair, will kindly filled. And that is agenda item 9. I'll leave the chamber, and I'll come back for the last item on the agenda. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Polly, as Chair has just explained, and I will be chairing for this item. So this is, agenda item number 9, and it can be found on page 47 of our agenda, and I believe Matt Gallagher is taking this report. Is that correct? Over to you, Matt.
Thank you. I'll just run through the presentation. Probably at the outset, it's just worth recognising this report's for noting, firstly, and also we're seeking delegated authority to progress certain matters on the project before a final decision is taken, which will probably be for full council. So it will come back before members further down the track. So in terms of the presentation, which there are only 3 slides, so less is more. That's the site. I know which members are familiar with London Gateway, so that's the site of the local development order. To put it in context, Corringham and Stanford-le-Hope is off to the top left-hand corner. The River Thames is to the south, and the area highlighted in yellow is basically about 220 hectares, which is 650 acres in old money, of former oil refinery, which is currently being developed for logistics with ancillary offices and also some general industrial and light industrial floor space. London Gateway Port, which is the same company but a different entity, is to the south, and members will be aware of construction which is ongoing at the moment, and they will have seen the cranes in the distance and all the rest of it. TEP, which is Thames Enterprise Park, which you may be familiar with from previous committees, is off to the east. So that's the site we're talking about. So it's about 220 hectares. That's what it looks like on Google Earth. So the port is quite clearly recognisable off there to the south, and you can make out stacks of containers and ships which are berthed at the port. And then we've got a railway line which has been upgraded, which passes east-west, and to the north of the railway line we've got the LDO site, and that's at Logistics Park Local Development Order. So, and again, you can make out from this image various grey rectangles which are currently operational, mainly logistics uses. And you can also make out, if you look very closely, the road network, which is the primary road network is in, and things like drainage swales and surface water drainage infrastructure is already there. And in terms of the context of buildings, and I'll explain a little bit more in a minute, the red ones there are where plots have already been developed on site and are operational, and then you've got the blue ones where, in essence, planning permission has been granted. It's just subject to contracts being let and construction going on. You've got an orange one on the top right-hand side there, where a unit's actually been constructed as we speak, and then the grey remaining areas are where development hasn't commenced. So the context, bearing in mind you have London Gateway Port and you have London Gateway Logistics Park, is that back in the day there was an outline planning permission for a logistics park, and there was something called a harbour empowerment order, which basically grants permission to develop and operate a port. The port has developed it on its own terms, so to speak, and it's about half operational because there are 6 berths, and number 4 berth is currently under construction. But on the logistics park, so north of that railway line, put simply, there were problems with the outline planning permission because it was such a weighty document with an awful lot of planning conditions, and there were chops and changes to the conditions. So it got to a point about 10, 12 years ago where the council and DP World London Gateway took the decision, we need to straighten this out in planning terms and try and simplify it as far as possible. So the procedure for doing that is something called a local development order, and the simplest way to explain that, it's a site-specific permitted development. So within a defined red line, subject to restrictions, conditions, Section 106 obligations, development can be built within certain parameters, and that simplifies the process. It makes it easier for the council in permitting, and it certainly makes it easier for future plot occupiers because it gives certainty and it gives speed. The downside to it is documentation like environmental statements, habitats regs, has to be provided up front. So all the work's up front, the order is made, and then it's speed and simplicity after. So currently there's a local development order which was made by the council, because the order has to be made by the council, it can't be made by anybody else, and that was made towards the end of 2013. It was time limited, as most LDAs are, and it would expire in November. Some members might recall back last summer, July I think it was, 2021, we provided an update report, which was basically, we are looking to embark on a new local development order. So the report before you gives the update. So we're at the stage now where we've signed a planning performance agreement with DP World London Gateway. That's mainly a project management tool, but that also makes sure that the council's costs in making the order are covered, which is fairly key, obviously, at the moment. And we have appointed legal advisors, because we need to be robust on something like this, because it's a very big site, and we've appointed planning consultant to help out on the planning, on the heavy lifting of the planning, and we've appointed an environmental regulation, impact assessment regulation and habitats regs appointment. They're doing work as we speak. They've done some baseline surveys, there's ongoing work. So the wheels are turning on preparing the documentation to support the order, because the work's up front, if you like. You know, we have to assess it and mitigate and put conditions on it, and that work has to be done now up front. So that's, the report gives you the update on that, and as I said, the wheels are actually turning. In terms of what the new LDO will do, it's substantially the same as the existing one. It will grant planning permission for about 740,000 square metres of floor space. That's slightly less than LDO1 because the market has the market demand is for slightly smaller units, whereas at a time 10, 12 years ago, the demand was envisaged to be for super sheds, and that hasn't quite panned out. So there's slightly less floor space, and there's a bit more of a mix of uses as well, because the use classes order has changed, and if you can imagine an awful lot of people being employed on site, well, some supporting ancillary floor space, like a creche, like a gym, like something to eat at lunchtime, that's a sensible solution for size of site and for the number of people who will be employed on the site. So those sorts of uses will be introduced within the new LDO. The plan I've got in front of you, I mean, that's useful because the red, basically, is about 300,000 square metres. That's been secured through the LDO. So the LDO has been successful, but it is market-led, and it depends on the market and where the market demand is. So that's why we're looking to roll onto LDO2 to hopefully, touch wood, finalise the development. So that's really the background. We have a draft order in preparation. There will be various procedural steps to go through, like EIA screening, like Habitats Reg screening. So they're legal steps to go through, and then eventually we will have an order and we will have to go to public consultation. So it's not just an order is made and it's imposed. There will be a point when the paperwork is finalised as far as it can be, where there's a proper public consultation and consultation with relevant consultees, highways, environmental, etc., etc. Provisionally, that would be towards the end of this year. And there are statutory requirements about site notices, press notices, and for LDO1 we did an evening event, a local hall, I think it was from recollection. So that's all to come. It's not just a case we're just imposing an order. There will be proper public consultation further down the track. There is a challenge. It's fair to say, because of the amount of paperwork which is required, there is a challenge in doing all that before the existing local development order runs out in November. So paragraph 6.5 of the report basically sets that out. Going to the recommendation, so the report gives you the update, but also, if you look at the recommendation at paragraph 1.2, what we're seeking from you is basically delegated authority to continue rolling with the various reports which need to be done, with EIA screening, so that's screening under the Environmental and Impact Assessment Regulations, and also screening under the Habitats Regulations, because it's a European protected site, which is the mudflats, basically very close by. And we need to do that and issue something called a screening opinion and also a scoping opinion. And what we're also asking you to agree to is, when the documents are ready, to basically press the go button on public consultation. Because that's an important procedural step, but it needs to be done as soon as we're ready, basically. So rather than coming back to you and saying, is it okay to go to consultation, what we're sort of asking you is it okay when it's ready to just go live with the consultations? As I said, it will be press notices, it will be sign notices, we will notify local residents, we'll notify local, the usual consultees, and we'll have a discussion about trying to do a local event, because we did that on LDO1. We can arrange that nearer the time. So we are seeking delegated authority to do that as well. But as I said earlier, the decision of whether or not to make the order or not is for full council. So it will come back. I'm going to be a bit vague on timeline. I'm hoping it will be before November this year. Let's keep our fingers crossed. But we will need to come back to members for that final decision, yes or no. Happy to take any questions.
Have members got any questions for the officer? Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, just the first one really, it just sprung to mind. You just mentioned on the local consultations, when that time does come. How far-reaching is that? I mean, what sort of, can you give me kind of an indication of how many residents borough-wide would be consulted?
I'd have to check exactly what the regulations say, but I was involved in LGO 1 a long time ago, and from recollection, what we did, I mean, I think we took out a half-page advert in the paper, rather than just tucking it away on the notices part of the paper. I think we actually took out a half-page advert, so maybe we can consider doing that again, so it's a bit more open and out there. I spent a day putting up site notices. I think I put up 60. All over, anybody with a reasonable view towards where the site is, because the nearest residential property is a fair old distance away. I know there's been an issue with construction noise, but in terms of visual impact, it's a fair old distance. But basically everybody on the northern side of the Manor-way, for example, and I think wrapping round towards Rainbow Lane, is it, to the, they would have been plastered with site notices. And then, I can't remember, you're testing my memory about what we did in 2013, but we would have publicised the evening event. So that was an evening event with presentation boards, and it was, come along and answer your questions. We don't, by statute, we don't have to do that, but we thought we'd better. So it's a combination of press notice, site notice, maybe an evening event. We could look at whether or not individual letters through people's doors are required, because there's, to put it bluntly, there's a cost associated with that. And sometimes people pick up on it and sometimes don't. We'll take a view about that. So I think that's probably about the best I can give you at the moment. I mean, what I was thinking, we had a conversation internally, I think it was early in the week actually, with one of the consultants, is whether or not nearer the time we bring another update report back. So perhaps later on in the summer to this committee to start filling in some of those details, because I appreciate there's probably be a bit of a gap while work's being done and you're not really cited on it. So that's something we can certainly consider as bringing an update report, and we can maybe fill you in about how we're thinking about consultation. But press notice, site notice, evening event, we can think about whether or not we could do a letter drop. It really depends on resources, and because if it's in the thousands, it's that's an issue potentially. But we'll look at what the regulations say, and we're happy to bring that back and have a discussion.
Sorry, Officer Lee Nicholson wants to just come in on the point that Mr Gallagher has made before I carry on with questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to add that in terms of what Matt just set out, typically the consultation would also go live on the Council's website, so there would be an e-consultation element to it, as well as the sort of the physical site notices and things like that.
Yeah, I suppose thinking out loud, I mean, the difference between 2013 and now, I mean, social media is a whole different.
And if I would suggest that it was resourced very different back in the day, because the Development Corporation was still involved. So, did you want? Councillor Watson wants to speak, so can I let her, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Arnold, and then I'll
Thanks, Matt. I just want to know a bit about the timelines, really, because the existing LGO is due to run out in November. So we need to get this in place if we want to continue or whatever by November, and so it needs to go to full council. So at the moment we're just in preparation stage. So can you give me more about, like, first of all, what is the timeline? When are you expecting to go into full council? So it does overlap the fact that the LGO runs out and this one is already in place. And if it isn't, for any unforeseen reason, and the current LGO has run out, then what? And the last question, and this is it, is On your lovely colourful plan there, there's a planning application, a retrospect planning application. Why wasn't that actually put within the original LDO? And why is it retrospected? And when is it due to come then if it's retrospected? Thank you.
Thank you for that. The timeline, funnily enough, I was working on the timeline this afternoon because the environmental consultant who was appointed provided a timeline probably a couple of weeks ago, and I had a call with another consultant, it's like consultants all over the place, about how rigorous that is and where we can try and double track processes to buy back time. So the indicative timeline for the EIA is fairly important because I don't want to blind you with like documents all over the place. The order is fairly straightforward. It's like you can build this use class subject to these conditions. The environmental assessment will take those sort of development parameters and assess them on a worst case scenario. And it might propose mitigation, and in theory, once the environmental impact assessment is complete, that could mean tweaking the order itself or the mitigations. So the assessment is fairly key. The consultant is saying that, and that they do allow time for review and they do allow time for tweaking, but it runs until, bearing in mind summer surveys need to be done. Some of the time-sensitive winter surveys for ecology, for example, over wintering birds, they've been done already. But for the summer surveys, you have to wait till summer. There's no way around it. It's looking about September for the EIA, which is tight. There's no other way of saying it, that's tight. But that's partly why the recommendation says as soon as we're ready, we'll just jump and go to consultation straight away without trying to schedule in a planning committee to get authorisation to do it. So the timeline we're sort of thinking about is, with the following wind and everything, all the stars aligning, it could be November. But if I'm being realistic, I don't think it will be, because you have to allow some flex. So whether or not it's before Christmas or whether or not it pans out into the new year, I think that's more likely. It'll be very early in the new year. So there could be a gap. I'm just looking at your questions quickly. Yeah, the overlap. So certainly London Gateway have thought about that, because they could have occupiers or developers or businesses who are interested in plots and will want to get on site, and they'll want the certainty. We have, I'll get onto plot 4040 in a minute, which is the orange one, because that's a very good point you made. There could be a scenario where DP World London Gateway think to themselves, if they're in an early commercial negotiation with a potential occupier on a plot, let's go under the existing order to get it in the bag, perhaps. So that's one way of doing it. The other thing we're talking about, and we have had to take legal advice on whether or not there would be provisions, and this is, I'm trying to, it's difficult for me to understand sometimes, so I have to replay it in my head. Whether or not would be provisions whereby if something is not, reverse back a bit. So it's authorised by the order, but what we do is a checking process. So it's called a prior notification. So we get 28 days to check it, to make sure, yes, it's in compliance with the order, and then we can issue, and then they can basically go and do it. So there's a 28-day, we're not issuing a permission, we're just confirming its compliance with the order. So what we're talking about is a provision whereby anything which is sort of consented under LGO 1, there would be a period of grace, if you like, whereby they could bridge the gap between LDO 1 and LDO 2, and we're talking about how many months that could potentially be. The nuclear scenario, which nobody wants, but I'm going to say anyway, is they would have to make standalone full applications. And nobody wants that because that just complicates things exponentially. So we are thinking about ways, I'm not going to say ways round it, because it's, you know, we have to be robust, but ways through it whereby you could bridge any gap. We're going to minimise any gap, if there is a gap, to the bare minimum, but we are thinking about ways, which is why we've taken legal advice, which are robust to make sure we can bridge between the two, because nobody wants a gap in the middle and a full application. And also, I mean, it depends on what the market's doing at the time, because it's market driven. So, you know, I can't tell you what the market is going to be like, but clearly the commercial negotiation will take place over many, many months. So in summary, we're looking at ways to bridge the gap. DP World London Gateway are very aware that the existing LDO is running out, so they're looking at their options as well. And we talk, there's a catch-up call every week at the moment, pretty much, to move things on as best we can. So hopefully that's, you know, some comfort about the overlap. And yeah, we're painfully aware that the existing LDO does time out. Plot 4040, which is the orange one. Right, draw breath. It's about 11,000 square metres. So it's not one of the biggest, but it's still fairly big. The other thing, I'm talking anecdotally, because it's such a big site, 11,000 square metres, and you know, anywhere else you think that's massive. The scale of the site is big. So even a building, and the existing order allows buildings up to about 42 metres, I think it is, which again, anywhere else, it'd be vast. Because of the size of the site, you hardly notice it. So that's just anecdotal stuff. Plot 4040. We issued July, August time, confirmation it complied with the order. Contractors were instructed to get on with it. They commenced piling, and it's impact piling. Because of the ground conditions, they have to bang the piles in. There's a restriction in the LDO. There's lots of restrictions in the LDO. One of the restrictions is on that northern edge and on the western edge, because it's close to the marsh where you get overwintering birds, so there's an interest. There's a window within which you cannot pile. They sneaked into the window. I say sneaked into the window. They told us up front they were going to hit the window. So we had an open conversation with them, and they had a conversation with Natural England, and they put in noise monitoring, etc., etc. But the default position is, because they went 10 days, 2 weeks into the window where technically they shouldn't have gone, the default position is it needs planning permission. It cannot be authorised by the order because they went beyond their window on impact piling. Now, we've got an application in front of us now for part retrospective permission, because if you were to go on site, the building's well on its way, but it can't be authorised by it's a technicality, it can't be authorised by the order. You have to go back to a standalone planning permission. Now, that complicates things, unfortunately. You know, in terms of floor space permitted by the order, you have to sort of factor in that this is within the red line of the order, but it hasn't actually been approved by the order. So that's a headache for us and for London Gateway. On the point about the ecology, to be fair to London Gateway, they've played an absolute straight bat with it. They notified Natural England, who are obviously the relevant consultee. They put in monitoring for noise, and they've kept everybody in the loop. And we've consulted Natural England. I haven't seen the response yet, but I would expect them not to have an issue. It's partly because the window was basically from November to March, which is winter, but it depends on, you know, local conditions and you know, how early winter arrives and all the rest of it. So I'm expecting Natural England to basically say, yeah, there's not an issue with it and it didn't cause disturbance and all the rest of it. So that's the answer to that one. They just, unfortunately, because we live in a real world, they went 10 days or 2 weeks beyond the window where they can do impact piling. So it couldn't be authorised by the order. It's complicated stuff, I'm afraid. So that's why you've got that orange block.
Councillor Arnold.
Oh, no, that's fine, Chair. I'll leave my comments just for the end. It's absolutely fine. You can continue.
Certainly, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Matt, for the answers. Not too happy about going into retrospect planning application, I must say. The other question is, on here, the LGO is only 30% that's been carried out on it, 70%. It looks like it's, and you said it's very successful, but only 30% has been done on this. Does that mean that the other 70% will be wrapped up in the LGO, the new LDO?
Yeah, I think we put in the report that the current LDO permits 830,000 square metres.
Yeah, you said.
And we've given you a figure in the report about what's been either built out or confirmed as being in compliance. So that's where plot occupiers have, or potential occupiers have come forward and wanted to plot. It is market driven.
Yeah. All I'm saying, it just says today over 30% of the total has consented by the LGO. Well, the LGO is due to run out in November, so I'm assuming that the other 70% of that floor space will be wrapped up into the new LGO.
Yeah, the new LGO will have a lesser floor space.
Right, okay.
It's 738,000 square metres. And the point about including all of that floor space is the order allows adaptation of building and it allows changes of use as well, or within certain parameters, change of use. So all of the floor space is in there because in theory you could have a building which you had a change of use from warehousing to light industrial or vice versa or whatever. So that's why the whole of the floor space is. So I think the point you're getting at is, I'm assuming the point you're getting at is, are we expecting the balance to be built out in LGO2? Market driven, you'd hope so. I mean, it's been, in my view, it's been successful from where I sit because the outline planning permission was a bit of a nightmare. Just shy of 100 planning conditions. And you had something called Section 73 consents, which are changes to the conditions, but they operate as new planning permissions. So it was nebulous, it was confusing, it was too many layers, and even working on it for a fair chunk of my time, you just couldn't get your head around it. So in that respect, the LGO is far, far simpler as an animal to deal with. And the benefit for London Gateway, if they're having that commercial negotiation with the plot occupier, they can say to them basically, you tick these boxes, it's authorised. And then we, as I said, we get a set of plans come in and a set of documents, we check them, 28 days, we say, fine, it complies with the order, they can be on site the next day. So that the speed and the certainty is the benefit for the site owner. You would hope that the remainder would be built out in the 10 years. Depends on the market, of course, and where we're going. But and again, anecdotally, we're getting an awful lot of interest about logistics. And whether or not that's a post-COVID thing, whether or not that's a post-Brexit thing, probably a combination of lots of things, and home shopping and all the rest of it. There's a very strong demand for logistics, as you've probably seen from other committees, and you'll probably see from future committees. If it's well located and it's modern, purpose-built floor space, because there's an awful lot of automation in modern warehouses, so they're getting higher and higher. So, yeah, you would hope that the remainder will be built out. If it isn't, well, let's see where we are in 10 years. To say that.
Are there any more questions, Councillor Arnold?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, yeah, it's not really a question, really. It was just following on from the consultation thing earlier on. You know, really, I know this may not be exactly the right appropriate time to say it, but you know, really, we do have a kind of a moral duty, really, to residents around that area. I mean, it's going to be far-reaching, and I know residents are going to be very curious to know exactly what's going on. And actually, you hit the nail on the head then when you said logistics. I just really want to sort of say now that obviously it's going to have a major impact on the neighbouring areas, you know, the freight movement, the lorry movement, and that's why I think it's really important to make sure that residents are taken along on this journey. It's not only this site, there's an awful lot more coming to that area that's going to affect the future generation. I think if we take residents along with us on this, on the good side of the journey, that's worth doing. You know, we need to really sort of give them the good news story and also be very, very honest about anything that's negative, so that all residents have plenty of time to comment and to deal, digest, etc., if you kind of know what I mean. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just pick up on one, just as a
Sorry, Mr. Gallagher, can we finish questions and then we can go into exchanges, if that's okay, because I have got some questions myself. With the local development plan, with this LDO, obviously there's consultees within the development plan. Will they have any input in or connection with this? Because as well as residents, as you say, we do have a lot of consultees associated with the LDP as well.
For the emerging local plan, there was a local development scheme published recently, which is the timeline. Now, I think we're going to a draft in the summer. I'm looking at Lee, he'll probably knows the detail better than me. So there'll be a draft of the new local plan in the summer. Now, in the existing local plan, London Gateway and TEP next door are allocated as employment sites. I don't see that changing. I mean, there'll be a full consultation on a local plan through the local plan process. I picked up the point Councillor Arnold made about how we do it, and yeah, we'll certainly have a good think about that, and whether or not we go beyond what the statutory minimum is, because there's always a statutory minimum, but it's what you can do on top of that. So I think we've very much taken it on board. And just to pick up one point about mitigation and highways you were picking up on, the existing LDO, an awful lot of the mitigation is highways related. Junction improvements, you know, the Manaway roundabout, for example. And to be fair to London Gateway, they've probably put a lot of their mitigation in up front before they needed to in terms of triggers. But I'll take the point, it's lorries on roads, which is a big impact, and that will form a fairly key consideration for consultees when we get to you know, the formal consultation on this.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. You want to come in on a point?
Thank you, Chair. It was just confirmation around Regulation 18 of local plan is due to go to full council in July.
I also note in the papers that the LDOs can be granted unconditionally. So are we being more proactive by actually trying to get the best for our residents by working with the DP World to condition this LDO?
Yeah, but LDOs can cover all sorts of different development. It doesn't have to be employment generation, but the bigger ones in the country, and this is one of the bigger ones, you would certainly need conditions and obligations in the section 106. So the LDO 1, as we call it, the document includes for the types of development which are authorised, which is basically you can build new buildings, you can change of use, you can do infrastructure, and you can do associated development. There will be conditions on those 4 subcategories, and then for the site as a whole, there's a whole new raft, a separate raft of planning conditions, and that's the best way to think of them. They're planning conditions. So we will certainly look at the conditions and how they've operated. Have they been successful? Yes or no? Do we need to reimpose them? Is there anything else which has come out of the woodwork which we need to think about? So it will be subject to conditions, yes.
Lovely, thank you. Are there any more questions? Then we'll open it up for comment. Any councillors got any comment to the officers? I'd just like to firstly say thank you so much to the officers for the work that's been done up to this stage. If we go back to the original LDO 1, the resources that were available with the then Thames Gateway Development Corporation in conjunction with Thurrock Council. So for these guys and girls to get us to this stage, as they have done, I think we need to acknowledge what a fantastic piece of work that they've done thus far. They did bring it to July, last July, and put it on the radar so that we could start making moves to not miss our deadlines. And personally, I think this, given the nature of council with PERDA, elections, summer recess, that's my other job. Sorry, summer recess. I think that this shows good foresight on behalf of the officers and the council by letting them go and deal with the day-to-day work stuff of it. We've had clear understanding from the presentation tonight that as we reach stages, I would hope that ward councillors will be contacted once the consultation, and if that can be noted, please, that it needs to be on their radar when that consultation's coming up, because they've all got their own networks, they've all got their own links that they can help promote that, help the council promote that, so that would be a good thing. We've got 2 recommendations in front of us. So first of all is recommendation 1.1 is to note the report, which I think we're all agreed on. We've noted the report. Recommendation is 1.2 to delegate the authority to the Assistant Director of Planning and Transport, Public Protection and Major Applications Manager. That's quite a title. To progress in the draft LDO 2, including stages of environment, EIAs, screening, and also including delegating the authority to undertake statutory consultation and publicity as soon as the draft order and supporting documentation is complete. Are we agreed on that recommendation? Agreed? Thank you very much. And really, again, great piece of work, guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Right, so that then takes us on to the last item on the agenda here this evening, which is Pool House, Godman Road, Chadwell St Mary. It's item 10, and it can be found on pages 57 to 64. Is that yourself, John? Yeah, if you'd be so kind as to present a report, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site's on the screen in front of you at the moment. It's one of the 3 tower blocks in Chadwell St Mary. You can see it on the screen there. Again, another red line site plan. So it's part of the bottom of the existing building, which is presently used as an open storage area. And the proposal is to convert the storage area into a caretaker's restroom. So tea-making facilities, tables, kitchenette, and toilet. That's the existing building. So that's what it looks like. So it will be conversion of one of those storage areas at the bottom. The application is accepted in principle. It includes a couple of new windows. So it's acceptable in all other terms. So approval is recommended.
Okay, thank you, John. That takes us to questions. Are there any questions? No? No, you're happy with this one? Okay. Let's take a quick look here. 57. No, obviously good news. Obviously fantastic if we can provide those facilities for the staff. So it certainly looks like it's a good, worthwhile proposal. If there's no further questions, there's no speakers, we'll go to the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission, subject to the following conditions. That's recommendation to approve on page 61. I'll recommend that. Is that seconded? Councillor Shinnick. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, brilliant. All right then, so that's that item approved. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's the end of the Planning Committee. We do have March and April's meetings before the end of the municipal year. Once those agendas are published, if you did want to call for a site visit prior, just let us know. As obviously we're coming to the end of the year now anyway, so we'll see how things go. All right, thank you very much. Cheers.